So welcome to this video. I have a mini sewing machine, and when I pop the fabric in, you'll see that there's no movement at all. So there's clearly an issue with the feed dogs. So watch the rest of the video and I'll show you how I fixed that problem. So first of all, disconnect the power and the pedal and locate the screws that are holding the two pieces of the chassis together. I think there are 7 in all. Just check. Okay, so I've taken the screws out and just very carefully take the two pieces apart carefully, just so you don't dislodge any pieces like the thread or the power and pedal cable inserts. So here you'll see now, not angled it right for the camera, but you can see the feed dogs. What I'm looking at there is just why the feed dogs aren't actually protruding through the 2 holes that they should be. And I can see that there's a screw that's holding the feed dogs. That part hasn't been placed in the right position, so I've just unscrewed it, realigned the metal. Now I don't know if it's because it's moved because it's just cheap plastic and cheap metal, or if it was just never installed correctly. So I've just loosened the screw, repositioned the part and just tighten it up. Now I'm just checking now if I put that needle plate back in position, will the feed dogs move up and down? So I'm happy with that. Carefully put the 2 pieces back together, making sure they're all lined up carefully. Make sure the dial for the hand wheel is in the right place. And I'm just making sure the needle plate is sitting correctly in its groove there. So I need to just prod the screwdriver in there just to get it right. Just go all the way around, check all the seams match. It's working. Right. So before I plug it all back in, I'm just going to place one of the screws back just to hold it firmly in position. Okay, so I've put 2 screws back actually because we need a bit more stability. One didn't feel right. So there's the 2 screws back in. Let's just switch that machine off, just make sure everything's working, and we'll plug the machine in. Right, so everything's moving. Just a quick check, everything's moving. Let's put this fabric in. Now you can see there's some movement, and if I just gently push the fabric, just not really hard, it does move. So clearly the feed dogs are still back up. They've not moved out of place, but something's not quite right. The fabric should be feeding through fairly simply and easily. Let's just give that another go. And actually, let's have a quick look. And what I can see, if I just check, yeah, the feed dogs are moving, so something's not quite right. Let's have another look inside.
Can't see anything.
No.
No?
Right, so there's the feed dogs there. The problem is the plates, that's moved, so because it's so wangy, the whole system's moved down. What's happened is that plastic there is leaning back.
Okay, just take your fingers on there.
Yeah. So what happens is, see those feed dogs, and the pressure from this spring's too high as well. Look, it pushes the whole system back.
Is it not sat in a groove here? Like
It
that plate, isn't it not?
It is, but it's not supporting it enough because it's so, look at that, it's just so wandgy. So I've fixed the feed dogs, but look at that.
Why don't you put some paint? Why don't you put something in there to jam it up?
To help force it up.
Can you move this as well? It's got, like, have you tried to undo these?
Yeah.
Those two screws there.
And I've moved that system up a little bit, so it did go up, and it sits perfectly. You can see it sits perfectly there, without the pressure of the feed dog, of the presser foot.
Go and put it down there.
Well, as soon as you put the presser foot down, the spring is. Just see that the whole of that system just forces itself down. So even if I put anything there, it's still not. What I need is something to yam that up there. But then if you do that, then the whole system of the feed dogs isn't going to rotate.
Is it worth the bother?
I mean, it's a £5 machine. They sell them for about £25, £30.
What?
I have repaired it. I've got the feed dogs to come up because they had been pushed down so much that what happened is they pushed down so much, they'd moved over, so they weren't lined up with the hole. And because they weren't lined up with the hole anymore, I just had to readjust the screws there. And
why don't you clip off a
portion of the screw of that spring? Should we try that?
Well, if you think that's...
Well, that is definitely what's going on, isn't it? If we remove that, and then just take some of that pressure away from the spring, and then just cut a little bit there. Okay, so after that brainstorming session with my helper, I've decided to take off 2 small ringlets from the spring, and hopefully that's going to ease some of the pressure from that spring onto the feed dogs. As I said earlier, if you could hear, that the pressure, the force of that spring is just too much, and it's pushed those feed dogs so hard that they've bounced right into the machine and misaligned, and that's probably what's happened. So it probably did work in the first instance, but then after some use, and maybe some heavy use, thick fabric probably forced those feed dogs to go into the machine. These aren't the best machines to buy for thick fabric. It's probably good for 1, maybe 2 sheets of thin cotton fabric, but nothing else. So just putting it all back together, put the foot back on, and then screws back into place. And once that's done, I can put the machine back in place. So you can see it's a lot easier. You can't see it or feel it, but the pressure of that spring is a lot lighter now. So if I just put all that back together, and we'll give it a shot and see what happens. Supply is still accessible over there. Put this on carefully, make sure everything's engaged. Get that needle plate back in position. There we go. You can see the power supply, you can see everything is in there. Let's put a couple couple of screws back in, make sure it's fixed so it's not coming to come undone. Okay, that will do for a minute. And the power supply back in to the machine. Right, just lift that up a bit. And the key thing is it's feeding, and we just want to watch the feed. Could remove some more of that spring to remove some of the tension. So not having to remove the whole. Separate the whole machine again. Let's just remove that spring there, and we'll just take a couple more of the ringlets. There we go, it's flown off somewhere. Let's see if that does a trick. You can see the feed dogs are protruding through now. The important thing here is to make sure you don't take too much of that spring away, because you do need pressure on the feed dogs. It is a presser foot, and that is what's going to help feed the fabric. So you can see here that the feed dogs are working, but they're not very good still, and just a little bit of a pull force from me helps move the fabric. So now we've got the feed dogs working, let's get this machine threaded up. So we need to go round this spring here, go round the tension disc. See these two little plates there? Not the spring, we want to make sure we go between those plates there. Then just feed it through this thing that moves left and right. So from top to the bottom, don't tangle your threads up. Get threaded around this spring here. So around that little spring. Then we've got a hole on the side there that we need to get it through. Okay, don't get it tangled up, and then we go through the needle. And let's get it through the needle there. Press the foot down so it's easier to do. And then once that's in, press the foot up so you release the tension, and you can just feed that through. Let's just try it now. Remember, these machines aren't designed to be making anything amazing with them. They've not got powerful motor, as you've seen. Let's put some power into it. I mean, they can run off 4 AA batteries, which tells you how little power they're using. Not very much there. Right, switch the light on, and then let's go. And there you go, there's your stitching. Tension's a little bit off, not too bad actually, but it's fine. There's your machine working again.